A proclamation from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Whereas while the nation was still recovering from the horrors of the Civil War, people in cities and towns across the country gathered to honor those Union and Confederate soldiers who had given their lives celebrating the first Decoration Day. And whereas after World War I, the nation came together again to honor those who had fallen in the service of their country. Renamed Memorial Day, the first Monday in May is when people remember and honor the memory of the men and women who had fought and died in all American wars and conflicts. And whereas throughout our nation's history, thousands of Massachusetts citizens have fought in wars and conflicts to defend our safety and way of life. And whereas their legacy of patriotism and dedication to country is an inspiration to all Americans. And whereas it is appropriate that all Massachusetts citizens remember the bravery of those who had given their lives, so that their sacrifices serve as a reminder of the cost of our freedom. Now, therefore, I, Charles D. Baker, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim May 25th, 2020 to be Memorial Day, and urge all these citizens of the Commonwealth to take cognizance of this event and participate fittingly in its observance. Given at the Executive Chamber in Boston this first day of May in the year 2020 and of the independence of the United States of America, the 243rd, by His Excellency Charles D. Baker, Governor of the Commonwealth.
Proclamation of the Town of Millis, Massachusetts. Whereas Memorial Day, originally called Decoration Day, is a day of remembrance for those who have died in service of the United States of America, and over 24 cities and towns lay claim to its origination, Waterloo, New York was officially declared the birthplace of Memorial Day by President Lyndon B. Johnson in May 1966. Whereas Declaration Day was officially proclaimed following the Civil War by General John Logan, National Commander of the Grand Army of the Republic, and its date was chosen to avoid the anniversary of any particular battle, General Order 11 states, the 30th of May, 1868, is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the late rebellion, and whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, and hamlet churchyard in the land. Therefore, be it resolved that the Millis Select Board does hereby proclaim Monday, the 25th of May, 2020, as Memorial Day in the town of Millis, and urge all citizens of this community to join in remembrance. Respectfully, Millis Select Board Chair Loring Barnes.
Good afternoon, good citizens of Millis, and welcome to this socially distanced Town Memorial Day event. I guess this is the new normal. Although we had to cancel parades and other Memorial Day observances, the town ensured that we must have something in keeping with this essential American Day of remembrance and solemn memorial of our country's patriotic dead. So here we are, remembering our fallen service members, aptly located in the Veterans Memorial Building. Thank you for taking the time and joining with us here today. First, I'd like to thank two Millis military veterans for their reading of the state and town Memorial Day proclamations. Thank you, Sarah and Russ. We appreciate you taking your time and leaving quarantine during this COVID-19 pandemic. Your service to your community and country continues. Second, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is John Moore, and I'm the Millis Veteran Services Officer. What's my role? It's to provide essential direction and services to the veterans and their families residing within Millis. Essentially, I work for all Millis veterans who served in each service branch. These veterans serve their country, and now my office and position serves them. So if there is a Millis veteran in your family, I'm here to help and assist. And I always look forward to meeting my fellow veterans. The bond is always part of us. As for me personally, I served 20 years in the United States Marine Corps, retiring from active duty in 2017. I served 4 combat tours in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and I saw firsthand of the sacrifices of service men and women, sacrifices they made on a daily basis with their bodies and their minds. I saw it in places like Fallujah, Ramadi, Kandahar, and the Helmand province. It was humbling, somber, and yet even amazing in its grace. I can report to you what a sight it was to see your fellow Americans in action. I saw the best, America's best, your fellow citizens' best. In the crucible of combat and security operations, sometimes in the darkest places, we see the best in people. The only thing that matched their ferocity in battle was their compassion and discipline and their professionalism. As America's example to the world, we relied on our training, our moral compass, our moral courage to do what was right and always protect the innocent. With the firm direction of General Mattis as we crossed into Iraq, he reminded us that a United States Marine is no better friend, no worse an enemy. We took that to heart, sometimes even at our own detriment and personal safety. And that's what selflessness that we honor here today. Today we commemorate Memorial Day 2020, and in keeping with its purpose, I would like to extend and give thanks to others that are sacrificing right now for the greater good. To all first responders, doctors, nurses, and even everyday citizens, simply doing their part during this pandemic. Your efforts and willingness to sacrifice for us all will be long appreciated and long remembered. We are all in this together. I remember saying that many times to my fellow Marines, and now I say that to you. On Memorial Day, we pause in solemn gratitude to pay tribute to the brave patriots who laid down their lives defending peace and freedom while in military service to our great nation. We set aside this day to honor their sacrifice and remind all Americans of the tremendous price of our precious liberty. As noted in today's proclamations, Memorial Day dates back to our Civil War here in the United States. But all great civilizations possess the common attribute of commemorating the selflessness of their fallen warriors. Ancient Greeks and Romans had annual days of remembrance with feasts and festivals and organized statewide decorating of graves. The Greeks had a special cemetery called Cyrmikos. And on that spot, the great Athenian general and statesman Pericles delivered a historical funeral oration, praising the sacrifice and valor of those killed in the Peloponnesian War, a speech that some have compared in tone to Abraham Lincoln's immortal Gettysburg Address. And we Americans continue this tradition of honoring our war dead and Gold Star families. And this demonstrates that we, as a great republic, still have people who believe in something bigger than themselves and a citizenry willing to honor their sacrifice. Today, we honor the sacrifice of all service members from Millis that went off to war to fight in their great cause, and unfortunately never to return. Men such as Harold Hall, Joseph Kearney, Stephen Pollard, Benjamin Vernier, Ernest and Thomas Clues, Allen and George Russell, as well as 2 Medal of Honor recipients buried at Prospect Hill Cemetery, William Newland and Charles Roberts. An amazing fact and something all Millis residents should be proud of. Think for a minute the willingness of some to give their lives so that others might live. It never fails to evoke us in a sense of wonder, a sense of mystery, and even a steadfast hope in humanity. As you visit any military cemetery, whether in France or Belgium, or the Philippines, or even the small part of Prospect Hill Cemetery here in Millis, and see the rows of simple white markers, Christian crosses, and stars of David, you realize that each one marks the resting place of an American hero. Whether they died in places like Bunker Hill, or the fields of Gettysburg, or the trenches of Belleau Wood, or the skies over Europe, or the volcanic sands of Iwo Jima, or the frozen Chosin Reservoir, or the steaming jungles of Vietnam, or the dense cities of Al Anbar, Iraq, or the mountains of Afghanistan. These sacred military cemeteries span several generations of young Americans, all different and yet all alike, like the markers above their resting places, all alike in a truly meaningful and profound way. Their country called, and they answered. They went knowing the risks and the purpose, and they never returned home. Each soldier, airman, sailor, Coast Guardsman, and Marine died for a cause he considered more important than his or her own life. Well, they didn't volunteer to die. They volunteered to defend their comrades and American values of freedom and the rule of law, where all men and women are created equal. And how they must have wished, in all the ugliness that war brings, that no other generations of young Americans would need to follow and undergo that same experience. As all veterans, our hope are for our children and their children to live in perpetual peace. But as 9/11 taught us, the enemies of peace will always have a vote, and our people, our way of life, and our love for peace must forever be protected by dedicated, freedom-loving people. Ronald Reagan said so poignantly 35 years ago, I quote, Sometime back, I received in the name of our country the bodies of 4 Marines that died on active duty. I said then that there's a special sadness that accompanies the death of a service member. For we're never quite good enough to them. Not really. We can't be. Because what they gave us is beyond our powers to repay. And so when a service member dies, it's a tear in the fabric, a break in the whole, and all we can do is remember. It is, in a way, an odd thing to remember those who died in defense of our country, in defense of us, in wars far away. The imagination plays a trick. We see these soldiers in our mind as old and wise. We see them as something like the founding fathers, grave and gray-haired. But most of them were boys when they died. And they gave up 2 lives, the one that they were living, and the one that they would have lived. When they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands, fathers, and grandfathers. They gave up their chance to be revered old men. They gave up everything for our country, for us. And all we can do is remember, unquote. With these words, I think of my own friends that I lost during the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Most died as young men with new wives and young children. They were in their late 20s with long life of peace ahead of them, with their families and their dreams. But that chapter was never written, those pages eternally blank. Their children grew up, and some even followed in their father's footsteps and into the Marine Corps. The world did continue. But to me, my friends are always the same age, frozen in time. A life unlived, so ours could be lived, in peace and enjoyed with our loved ones. We honor their sacrifice with how we choose to live. So where do we get such men and women so willing to defend and sacrifice for this republic? The answer is easy. It's right here in Millis. The love for freedom is not passed down in our DNA. Each American generation must fight for it, protect it, and hand it to the next generation to do the same thing. The town of Millis has always answered this call. It always has. Since the birth of this nation, sons and daughters of Millis have landed on the beaches, charged up the hills, and liberated countries. For as long as there is an America, there must be men and women willing to sacrifice everything they are and everything they will ever be for freedoms and unalienable rights of the American people. If we cease being a country worth fighting for, to live for, and even die for, then this great democratic experiment known as America shall indeed perish from this earth. But that has always been the case. Will we live up to our principles? All we need to do is look at our national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, and really listen and comprehend that last line. Francis Scott Key, watching the bombardment of Fort McHenry from a prison ship in Baltimore Harbor, purposely closes the poem in the form of a question. Oh, say does that Star-Spangled Banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave? The Star-Spangled Banner captures that mix of fear and patriotism and anxiety that Key felt through that long rainy night during the War of 1812 battle. He asks us all, and it still resonates, does that Star-Spangled Banner still wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave? It's a healthy fear to continually ask this question because it makes us vigilant and introspective. And it's a challenge to us all and a question to always ask ourselves. The men and women who died for this country and for that Star-Spangled Banner have so far answered that very question each and every time that question was asked. On this Memorial Day in 2020, our flag does still wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave. And it does so only because so many men and women wearing this nation's uniform were willing to protect it. In the end, all we can do is remember. And that's what Memorial Day is for, to simply remember. Thank you, and God bless to Millis's fallen patriots.